Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Cape May from Thunderworks Games. Cape May is an action selection game in which across 12 rounds you're going to be taking multiple actions per turn as you slowly build up the cape, trying to get as many points as possible, establishing area majorities, and trying to do so more efficiently than the other players so that you can win the game. In the game you're going to have 12 rounds, each of the rounds broken up into 3 seasons as you can see over here, moving this little lighthouse marker around the track. In each round you're also going to have 3 actions, resulting in a total of 36 actions per player that you're going to be taking as you try to figure out how to build out the cape. What you're going to be doing in the game over here is you're going to be taking actions to wander around, so the actions you can take are all listed on this handy dandy player over here, where you can play movement cards, build, upgrade, draw activity cards, play activity cards, retrieve movement cards, or collect 3. That'll all make sense in a second. Let's start with the first action, where you can play a movement card. In this game, you're going to have a handful of movement cards. You can either play the movement card as is, or if it has a cost in the bottom, you have to pay that cost as well. You're going to go ahead and play a movement card, and for example, I'll play this 5 over here, and I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whenever you land next to a spot, you'll now have the opportunity to build or upgrade on those spots, looking at these little pips showing you what's adjacent to what. A few other movement rules to be mindful of. Whenever there's going to be arrows, you have to follow those arrows. You cannot go against them. And there's going to be certain spots on the board that give you either birds or upgrades or extra cards or build actions. There'll be certain spots on the board that give you extra actions you can take in the game. The next action you can take is you can build an adjacent cottage or shop. You'll have your whole build track over here, and you're trying to build for 2 primary reasons. You're going to have the whole residential area, which you're going to build out your residential stuff in an attempt to get as many points as possible across the course of the game with a little bit of income. And then you're going to build out your commercial area with the goal of getting as much income as possible in the course of the game, because as you gather income, you're going to move up on this income track, and then whenever you have the end of seasons over here, you're going to get extra action cards as well as income to wherever equal to wherever you are on this track. So again, I can play movement cards as an action. I can go ahead and build as an action, specifically grabbing a cottage over here, and because of the terrain type, you have 4 different terrain types on the game, and because of the terrain type, I'm going to go ahead and pay 2 money, and I'll go ahead and increase my income by 1 on this track over there. I can go ahead and upgrade as another action, so I can take an action to upgrade it, turning it into a Victorian. Victorians are going to be worth points, as you can see over here on this track. Victorians are worth 1, 2, 3, or 4 points respectively. That's going to cost me an additional 4 money, but I'll go ahead and get an additional income. Again, residential areas are not big on income. They give you some income, but the main goal is points. Lastly, as an upgrade action, I can go ahead and turn it into a landmark. I can spend the 10 money over here, adding this as a landmark to the game, to the tile, and that will make it worth 7 points over here. As you can see, landmarks are worth 5, 7, 9, or 11 points respectively, again depending on the region on the board. Past that, you can go ahead and draw activity cards. So you can go ahead and, looking at this pile over here, you can draw 2 activity cards, keeping 1. So I can go ahead and grab these, adding these to my pool of cards, taking a look at what upgrades these allow me to do. These often give you different areas, either giving you things you can move to, upgrade actions, build actions, different things you can do across the course of the game. As an action, you can also spend these to go ahead and do the action, usually giving you a discount as well as some sort of flexibility in the action. You go ahead and upgrade anywhere, not just based on where you are, but upgrade anywhere. You can do so at a discount. You can jump to the pier over here. You can jump to a bunch of areas. They give you extra ways of breaking the game as you try to figure out how to slowly get as much control over this game over here. And then lastly, you have retrieving movement cards as an action. That 5 that I played is now out of my hand. I only have these cards left until I go ahead and slowly 1 by 1 I'll be playing them, slowly eliminating them until I eventually have a few cards left, and I can either keep playing cards or retrieve all my movement cards for an action. Additionally, I can take 3 money as an action. So you're doing all this, you're moving around, you're playing movement cards, you're playing upgrade cards, you're playing action card, activity cards, you're moving around the board, you're upgrading, you're building, you're getting money, you're doing all of that in an effort to get as much area control on this game as possible because of the endgame scoring, which consists, again, very nicely printed on your player aid, which consists of a few things. We're going to have those Victorians. These Victorians are going to score points depending on the region they're in. Your landmarks are going to score even more points depending on the region they're in. You're going to have majorities for having the most buildings in each of the 4 terrain types, scoring 1st and 2nd place for majorities over there. You're going to get points for your sets of birds. There's going to be opportunities to get cards that will give you sets of birds in the game. That's going to be landing on here, some of the upgrade cards over here. You're going to get different ways of getting birds, but you're going to get points for the larger the set of birds, the larger the set of unique different birds that you have, so birds will give you points as well. You're going to have points for your upgrade cards. These upgrade cards will happen whenever you upgrade a shop. This is going to be the residential pathway, but the commercial pathway, if you ended up in the right spot, the commercial pathway involves building out a shop, upgrading that to a business, and when you upgrade to a business, you're going to continue to increase your income even further. They're more profitable in terms of the money, the economy of the game than the residential track, but you're also going to get an upgrade card based on the terrain type that you have for that card. So you're going to be doing all of that. You're going to be getting the points. You're going to get upgrade points for upgrade cards. You're going to have points for your bonus cards at the beginning of the game. You're going to have a bunch of bonus cards that you have. You have the opportunity to choose different bonus cards you'll get that will give you different ways of scoring extra points depending on how or what you built in the game. And then lastly, you get a point for every 10 money remaining. and that's Cape May. 12 rounds, you're going to go through 12 rounds, taking 3 actions per round, the actions being mostly moving, building, upgrading, using your ability cards as you slowly develop with the Cape, building up more and more buildings, making this a luscious, giant, well, board full of plastic buildings, until eventually whoever scores the most points at the end of the game wins the game. And that is Cape May. I think I left with the event cards. At the beginning of each round, you're also going to draw an event card. That's going to be something you're doing in the game as well. These are generally negative, but give you different restrictions. Different either sometimes they give you income, sometimes they give you penalties, sometimes they force you to discard movement cards, they give you restrictions on extra costs if you build, and things like that. But those will happen at the beginning of every round, except for the first round of the game, which brings us to the review. Starting off with ease of play. The game is, for the most part, fairly easy to dive into. The rules are fairly clear. There's a decent section of the solo mode covering all of that. But overall, this is an action selection game. 12 rounds, broken up into seasons, taking 3 actions per round. From there, it's breaking down what the actions are, how they work. But for the most part, this is fairly basic. Endgame scoring, most of the information you need is very reasonably, very nicely printed on your player aid. They did a fantastic job with this player aid over here. As far as player count, this is a 1 to 4 player game. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking. Starting off with what I like, which to begin with, this is a great looking game, both from the art, the production, the way the board builds out. As the board develops, you're going to have more and more buildings slowly popping up. You're going to have little people wandering around the board, different areas giving you more restrictions as far as how you move, how you navigate, but the buildings are going to start popping up. You're going to have your cottages, you're going to have your shops, they're going to turn to businesses and Victorians, you're going to actually pop out your landmarks, and the board will take shape, adding color and making it harder and harder to build on specific areas. The game pace, the ease of play in the game is very solid. This is an easy game to jump into, it's an easy game to teach, to play. It's move, build, move, build. It almost feels a little Monopoly-esque or Monopoly adjacent in terms of the simple building up of an area in order to get as many points, in order to get your income. There's going to be those 2 income tracks, the 2 tracks. You're going to have your point track that you'll get from your commercial buildings, getting you chunks of points. You could easily have an income of 50 or more in this game, but the problem is you have to be trying to be balancing the fact that money at the end of the game is only worth a point for every money. Really, you're going to get chunks of points for building out your landmarks. So if you focus too much on that income, you're going to end up with extra money and not enough actions left to actually take advantage of it. Do it too early, and you're going to spend precious actions trying to gather extra money from the game, and so it's a little bit of balance as far as how much you push the economy, how much you push the residential, both essential aspects of the game you're playing, and trying to find that sweet spot between that as well as the building majorities, as far as trying to figure out where can you get those extra points based on where you build and how you build. And then you're going to have the upgrade cards and the action cards, the activity cards, that will all give you different ways of small little, almost abilities in terms of what they do. They're abilities. They give you basically better actions you can take as far as the build, the upgrade, the move, popping around the board. But for the most part, this is a fairly simple, accessible, quick playing game that plays in roughly around 90 minutes or so, as far as giving you actions and economy to build out the board, to focus on different tracks, and try to find the sweet spot of that while you watch Cape May develop. As far as what I don't like in the game, for the most part, the decision space to stuff happening ratio in the game is not great. And what I mean by that is, for me at least, the amount of actions you're taking, which you're trying to make a decision as far as where to build, how to take advantage, where do I want to focus on that majority. There's a lot of stuff that you're doing in this game, a lot of stuff as far as building and getting to the next step and building out your economy, but for the most part, you're just kind of moving forward to get to the end game. It feels like that the points in which you're making interesting decisions are less common. The points in which you're making interesting decisions come down to, for the most part, in my opinion, when you try to focus breaking from the economy, from the commercial into the residential, finding that sweet spot, and then additionally focusing on those majorities. As you look around the board and figure out that the players, that you can easily go ahead and get the majority in the gray up here, in gravel, and if you wait and sit there and build 2 buildings, you might be able to focus there, but the sand's a little more expensive, but you might be able to get points there, but it's also less majority, but it's more points. Finding those sweet spots in the game as you try to vie for majority or just straight up points, there's a little bit of decision space there, but for the most part, this is a game which you're moving forward, taking your actions every round to build, with not a ton of interesting decision space baked into that. This is more gateway in terms of what it's providing and giving you a sequence forward, a sequence that gives you choice and agency, but not a ton of it. Additionally, it's oddly restrictive without that much restriction, meaning we have this whole entire puzzle of moving around the board, of these one-way pathways, of your economy, of your action, of your movement cards, and trying to figure out how to move around the board. But for the most part, even at higher player counts, this game doesn't feel that restrictive until you hit the very last rounds of the game. There's almost always a way you can go ahead and move somewhere and build something, a way that does not feel too punishing. This isn't a game where I felt the need to feel clever based on how I moved or how I jumped around so that I can get that build most of the time you can move and you can build, and the building and the moving is not that complicated or not that essential as to where you go. And so it's a game that kind of feels like it's giving you a lot of restrictiveness to it, but it only really felt restrictive in the last round or two of the game as the board's finally starting to approach being cluttered, but most of the time it felt like you can go ahead and charge forward and get things done without feeling overly restrictive. And then lastly, I'll say the visual aspect of the board I'm not a huge fan of. The different areas of how, as far as how they creep down over here, lent it so that for the most part you can easily tell what's what when you're focusing, but especially as the board fills up, especially as these spots get covering, the difference between the colored spots, especially between the dirt and the sand, didn't feel as obviously visually evident, especially as the board filled out, which is a small graphic design frustration as far as the accessibility of things. As far as I can see, others not liking, first of all, the random negative events. There's a whole bunch of events over here, and some of them just punish all players equally, losing some amount of money, discarding movement cards. But then other times you have things like, go ahead and you can't build in this spot without paying a penalty this round, which is great, except that might really affect the way you are built and poised to go ahead and continue, and it might not affect me at all. And so these feel like a whole lot of randomness mixed into the game in a way that did not enhance the experience, but gives you an extra degree of just random negativity thrown in to mix things up. Additionally, the luck of the hidden goals has the same problem over here. You're going to have these hidden goals over here, these hidden goals that give you different ways of scoring points, and since they're hidden, you may find that another player is easily able to get theirs without much trouble at all, and that you struggle to get yours because someone else keeps building in your region without even realizing how it's affecting you. And so there's definitely a potential luck of the hidden goals, and those could be a big chunk of points in the game that goes to, 75 points or so. Having a swing of 8 or 9 points can easily be a difference in the scoring. As far as final thoughts on Cape May is lovely. It's charming. It's easy, it's simple, it's accessible. It's also lighter than what I'm personally looking for. It has a beautiful table presence and not a decision space to match, not for me at least. For me, this one's a 3 out of 5. I enjoy the game, I had fun with the game, but it's not one that I'm overly compelled by. It's one that feels a bit more gateway in terms of where it's at, which make it the right fit for you, for whoever's looking for the game. This is definitely on the lighter side as far as the experience it gives you, but it is satisfying to actually build things up. It's satisfying to build out that engine. It's just an engine that didn't give me as much decision space in it that I personally would have wanted from it. There seems to be a lot of potential, especially around the constriction of the movement, but that never really paid off until the final round or two, and so it's a game that gives you a process to follow, but not a lot of opportunities to feel clever within that process. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Foundations of Rome. If you're looking for a game that has a beautiful over-the-top table presence, and for me, a lot more bitingness in the decision space, Foundations of Rome, which is going to be considerably more expensive than this one, but it'll give you that feeling of a board building up, of a board developing underneath you, but with a lot more decision space baked in. And then similarly, going with the same reasoning or whatnot, Magnet, the First City, is another game that's going to have a degree of just plastic building, slowly coloring up the board and building out as you watch the city develop, with a much more of a focus on the interplay between the various buildings and the various economies of the board as players vie to fight for area control, fight for real estate, buying, selling, renting it, all to their advantage at the right timing before the market crashes. In any case, until next time, I hope you found this video helpful. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.